When discussing one of the most important, if not the most important thread in the plot of GTA San Andreas, the issue of the Loco Syndicate and the cooperation of this organization with Big Smoke are often overlooked. The Loco Syndicate is often seen as something peripheral to what is faced in the San Fierro area. In fact, Big Smoke's collaboration with the Syndicate is much more important and, at the same time, extremely interesting. The beginnings of Smoke's collaboration with the Loco Syndicate can be seen already during the introduction movie, which, as we said many times before, plays the role of introducing us to the events of the game. During one of the cutscenes, we see T-Bone Mendez bullying a member of a gang. Which gang? Well, it is very possible that this is a person who joins the ranks of the Caesar's gang, that is, Verio Los Aztecas, of course. In the same scene, we see Mike Terreno, who informs Mendez that he managed to get a buyer in Los Santos. It is true that there is no direct statement here that it is about Big Smoke, but in the context of the events of the game, it is completely obvious. Big Smoke's plans to get along with San Fierro's drug suppliers are due to the fact that Smoke took money from the crash unit in exchange for some kind of inviolability, and for organizing the entire venture. As we can learn from Mr. Terreno, Big Smoke has agreed to purchase merchandise up to $100,000 a month. In addition, during this scene, we witness a rather interesting situation in which Terreno receives a call from the government agency he works for, while lying to Mendez that he was talking to the buyer. It was, of course, a simple excuse for not getting exposed. Either way, Mike suggests Mendez to get the job done as quickly as possible and, most importantly, increase production. Mike assures Mendez that his connections in Panama will help to temporarily get them all the product they need. However, in the long run, importing drugs from Panama may prove to be too risky and, moreover, much more costly than producing the merchandise yourself. This gives us another very likely possibility that the crack factory that CJ destroys in one of the storyline missions was heavily expanded or even opened after the Syndicate got along with Big Smoke. And this is where the mentions of the introductory part end up. Meanwhile, we're going to see what's interesting about today's movie we can find in the very storyline of the game. At the outset, we would like to mention that some threads will be presented in a slightly different way than what is shown in the final game. In short, we will consider a scenario where Ryder was not a traitor to the Grove Street families, which, as some of you probably know too well, was the original concept of Rockstar North. Moving on to the merits, we look at the moments that show us how the Loco Syndicate and Big Smoke work together over the next weeks. The first task related to the theme of the episode is the mission called King in Exile. CJ meets there after a break with his sister and her boyfriend, Cesar Villalpando. What may seem strange to some is that CJ still doesn't quite believe that Big Smoke started trading drugs. Also, Cesar tells us that Big Smoke sends a car with money to San Fierro twice a week. Delivery takes place every Monday and Friday. In turn, every Wednesday and Saturday, the courier returns with the goods to Smoke. Carl announces that he will keep an eye on the highway leading to San Fierro from now on, and in fact, after this mission, we see the consequences of these words in the game. On certain days of the week, we receive a call from Cesar reminding us that the cash is leaving Los Santos, or that the crack courier has left San Fierro with the goods. These side missions perfectly show that, after the fall of the gang from Grove Street, the activities of Big Smoke and the Loco Syndicate could finally officially begin and move on in full swing. Another critical point is the mission titled Photo Opportunity. This is a very important quest due to the fact that CJ and Cesar have a chance to find out who is a part of the San Fierro drug syndicate. It all starts with a call from Cesar, who tells us that his cousin saw the Ballas probably going to get the drugs. After reaching the meeting place, we see, one by one, the people involved in this illegal activity. The first person to appear is T-Bone Mendez, the leader of the San Fierro Rifa. Then right after him comes Mike Terreno, an undercover government agent. At the end comes the pimp Jizzy B. As you probably noticed, we deliberately omitted Ryder. The reason is what we talked about before. Ryder wasn't supposed to be a traitor to the Grove Street families. Throwing Ryder to this and another mission, which we will talk about later in the material, was due to the fact that the idea of changing the plot concept to one in which Ryder becomes a traitor was born in the minds of Rockstar North only when the Loco Syndicate itself was created. At the end of this part of the video, we would like to mention a few interesting facts from the beta version of this mission. Namely, after the telephone conversation with Caesar is over, CJ comes up with the idea of hijacking a helicopter. Probably, he was supposed to go to the airport in San Fierro and pick up one of the parked helicopters from there. The thief itself was supposed to be quite detailed, because the main character was supposed to stun the pilot sitting in the vehicle. Immediately after that, CJ was going to call Caesar and ask him where exactly he was. Caesar was then supposed to reply that he was standing in the same place as in the final version, adding that he was stuck there because of the ballast, who had punctured his tires during the tailing. An interesting situation was supposed to happen while approaching the place, because the unconscious pilot was about to wake up and put the gun to our neck. Moments later, however, Caesar confuses the pilot, and CJ hits him again. It's worth noting that in the beta version of this mission, there are also some interesting facts about the characters that we learned from Caesar. Namely, CJ's sister's boyfriend mentions that T-Bone was in prison for trafficking heroin sourced from Mexico. Furthermore, Caesar admonishes that Mendez killed 2 of his men while being behind bars. Meanwhile, having returned to the main topic, after the photo opportunity, we know a lot, and at the same time, not much. But CJ's friend Woozy comes to our aid. He helps us identify all members of the Loco Syndicate. Woozy is heavily involved in the criminal life of San Fierro, thanks to which he is able to tell us a lot of useful information from the very beginning. Either way, CJ finally decides to buy into the favors of the Syndicate's weakest link, Jizzy B. This is how our infiltration of the Loco Syndicate begins. The tasks we perform for Jizzy are nothing interesting from the point of view of the walkthrough, really. However, the background of the story is something completely different. After completing several tasks for the Syndicate, there are climaxes that we witness in the last 4 missions for the Triad in San Fierro. They are hellishly important because in each mission, we get rid of one member of the Loco Syndicate, which ultimately ends its existence thanks to these actions. The first person to kill is Jizzy B. After killing the pimp, CJ takes his phone, thanks to which we find out where the meeting between the Loco Syndicate and the Ballast will be taking place. Even the day when Jizzy is killed plays an important role from the point of view of the plot, because it was on that day that Jizzy was to receive a phone call with directions. And that's why we move on to the next mission called Pier 69, which is about killing T-Bone Mendez. Interestingly, Mike Terreno was also supposed to come to the place, but seeing what was happening, he immediately decided to fly away. Of course, in the final version, Ryder will also come to Pier 69, who absolutely should not be there. This is evidenced by the fact that there are 2 lines of dialogue that Ryder spoke during previous missions. Plus, in the beta version, also Woozy was supposed to participate in the entire battle, thus fighting alongside other members of the Triad as well. The next important quest, which we have pretty much ordered by ourselves, is a task called Terreno's Last Flight. This time, it was time to take out Mike Terreno, who will want to fly by helicopter from the landing pad of the police station, which Woozy informed us about. We arrive at the place when the helicopter is getting ready to take off. CJ wants to blow up the helicopter at all costs, which he eventually succeeds. CJ thinks that, after killing Mike Terreno, the leader of the entire operation, the plan is almost accomplished. Putting the dot on above, and the story takes place in the mission called Yeka Boom Boom, where we have to take down the Loco Syndicate for good and take revenge on San Fierro Rifa, who has a scythe with both Cesar Villalpando's gang and Woozy's Triad. Although this task seems to be hellishly difficult, for example due to the large number of opponents and the fact that even blowing up the factory is questionable for many reasons, the end of the whole action is a success. CJ happily escapes from the scene, and the Loco Syndicate is officially erased. At this stage, Big Smoke's cooperation with the Loco Syndicate actually ends. From that moment on, we stop receiving calls from Caesar about the Patriot with money or Sanchez with drugs. Presumably, it was at this moment that Big Smoke began a great campaign to reconcile many gangs with the Ballas and Vagos, where in the future they would be able to join, among others, the San Fierro Rifa and the Russians. Probably the destruction of the factory in San Fierro was the main point where Big Smoke's fortress was about to be built. All the issues discussed today, looking at how extensive they are, how many interesting curiosities they contain, and how much they have in common with the events in Los Santos, brings to mind one question. Why, according to the players, the thread from San Fierro is not as interesting as the one from Los Santos? In fact, in most cases, our activities from San Fierro concern Los Santos, where we start our adventure with. However, the activities themselves are undertaken in the area of another city. And what do you think about this highly organized partnership? Was it worth a shot in the first place? We are curious about your opinion. Don't forget to drop a thumbs up or down because this helps us to choose wisely the next topics for you. See ya!